Hey, welcome back to Evil's Comics. I'm Evil Mike, and I got a review from you. From Boom Studios, this is Briar, issue number 1. It is written by Christopher Cantwell, art by Gemán Garcia, colors by Matheus Lopez, and letters by AndWorld Design. Let's get into it. Haha. This book was great. I liked it as a first issue. I hope we get a lot more in the lore, the story. But basically, it is a fairy tale, and it's a fairy tale you should know. I wowould say, like 98% of the world should know this fairy tale, because it's basically Sleeping Beauty. The book starts out, and we are with Briar Rose. That is her name. She is a princess born to kings and queens. She has fairies and godmothers, just like the Disney princess, same thing. But instantly a little different because she's narrating the story, and otherwise somebody else would have been narrating the story. And she even states that the narrator died and has got served in a cauldron but is dead. And she is narrating her own story. They kind of show you a little bit of her origin story about how she was a princess, the godmothers, the god fairies, that kind of thing. That just like the legend, she was supposed to stay away from anything sharp. One day they kind of left her alone, and sure enough, she did find the spindle down here, and she did touch the cursed spindle. It did put her to sleep, and this is where the story gets a little different. She does stay asleep. Her mom ends up dying. The father ends up, continuing on. It comes to a moment when Prince Charming rolls through. And just like in the story, he finds the sleeping princess, and he has the power to wake her with a kiss. In this story, that's where it's a little different, because instead of waking her with a kiss, he goes to the father and actually makes an agreement that he will marry the daughter and not wake her. They will be wed, king and queen, but he will basically rule. The king actually signs on for this, and they do wed the sleeping mother, but anyways, they do show over here that over the years, and Briar is still sleeping, that the kingdom got really, really strong with the united fronts of the new prince and her father's kingdoms. And at one point something happened, and they got too greedy, and the kingdom started to fall and go in decay. It says that over I think 1,000 years passed, and our princess is still sleeping. No, I'm sorry. It says 100 years passed, not 1,000. But nonetheless, a lot of time has gone. But basically, at this point, her whole kingdom has perished. They kind of show you in small little tidbits, but they kind of start you here where she is slumbering. Someone comes in where she is her resting place, literally her resting place, and he's cutting briar and all this, and, going through thatchels and trying to get to her, and eventually we do finally see Briar after 100 years of sleep. She looks kind of like a corpse, and this guy who has been perilously trying to get to her does, and we find out that he just wants something that's on her chest, some kind of locket right here that he snaps off, and he just ends up leaving. They kind of show a little bit of what he looks like, but not enough to, it's basically a guy in what looks like a cowboy hat kind of thing, maybe a hoodie cowboy hat, I don't know. It is medieval. Okay, so for some reason or other, because that guy snapped that thing off, I don't know if that's what woke her, but all of a sudden Briar Rose does wake from her slumber. Of course, being atrophied and all the actual things that you can imagine from being sleeping for 100 years. It literally happens to Briar. She wakes up, she's starving, her legs aren't working, none of her arms, that they're all weak. Basically, she can't even talk because her throat is so dry, but she's basically trying to clamber out of this chamber, she eventually does find like a little bit of liquid, even though it's from like a nasty river, and she is able to wet her throat, and she starts like making it through her what used to be her kingdom, and now it's just like ruins, and she doesn't really recognize anything. She mentions that she goes to several places that were supposed to be there, like watchtower, an outpost tower, stuff like that, but they're just not there anymore. And she really doesn't recognize any of the forest or the layout of the land around her at all. Eventually, she does find out this world is a lot horrible than she's used to, because she comes across this scene with this. It looks like a knight clutching a sword that's like kind of like half amputated. They don't really show it too much in detail, but he's pretty like gutted, and but you do find out that he's still alive. And as soon as he sees her, she starts throwing up. But it does get the attention of something else that's there, and we find out that there's angry creatures around. Now the book doesn't express whether there is some magicalness of fairy godmothers and stuff like that. So this is a pretty big sized rat that appears. We don't know if that was like they were always like that, or now the world's different, and then but anyways, the rat starts trying to attack her, and she eventually like grabs the sword from the half alive guy, because pretty much after she takes the sword, he pretty much dies, which might be a clue or something, I don't know, because he pretty much, it's like literal, but she ends up like back and forth fighting with the rat, and eventually she does end up like getting him to a position where she does cut his head off. Eventually she makes, she guts him, and she wears his skin as clothing. As you can see on the front cover, she's wearing the rat cloak that she got from the rat. But at this point in her rat cloak, she's just kind of like sitting in the forest over here, like freaking out. She does express that she has an immense fear of sleeping now, and she does not want to sleep under no situation. Of course, she slept for like 100 years. She does end up remembering another place that used to be like the main trading hub of her kingdom. Of course, she had never been there, being a princess, but she knew of it, and she heads in that direction. The next day, she does end up getting there. And upon arrival, the bartender says something like, "Oh, freaks get to drink for free," or something like that. And he sees her and deems her a freak. And he starts like, sending glasses of alcohol her way, even though she doesn't want alcohol, she just wants water. She's still at this point trying to talk. The bartender does note that she smells like maggots and stuff, because it wasn't, even though it looks like the next day, it might have been like a week that she was in the forest. It doesn't really say like specifics on how long, but the bartender does say that she smells like death. Eventually, as she's in the bar, there comes in a guy, and I could have swore this was the guy that like robbed her and kind of woke her up. He has the same style I had. They do not reference this at that moment, but let's just remember that guy for now. But we do find out that 4 guys enter the bar, and they are like slave laborers. They find people and just turn them into slaves, basically, and then they sell them. And basically finding her, and then she starts telling them, "Oh, I'm a princess, my king, queen," and she doesn't know how long she's been asleep. They all start laughing, "Yeah, princess, and then basically they just start, grabbing her, and they're just going to make her a slave, which they're doing down here. While this is going on, all of a sudden somebody speaks up and tells them not to lay a finger on her, blah blah blah. And we see this other character over here. It's a blue individual. I think they reference them as Norish, and they have ice blood, is why they are like that bluish tint over here. But we do find out this character's name is Spider. And she kind of references herself and uses that name like it's meant to, like she, stalks like a spider, and dwells like a spider. It's kind of cool. But she does try and come to their, to the princess's rescue. It doesn't work, because there turns out to be a 5th guy that, they just didn't know that was there, and they eventually end up knocking out Spider, and they end up grabbing both of them, and now they have two slaves. They start out their journey, and there is conversation. That this is when we find out Spider's name. But there's back and forth conversation between Briar and Spider, and basically Spider keeps trying to convince Briar to go to sleep. This is kind of like the second point in the book where she mentions that she doesn't want to go to sleep, and eventually it just kind of happens. When it does happen, there's this brief little thing right here, and we do see that someone's trying to contact her through the dreams. We don't know if this is a bad guy or a good guy, but it does say, "Hear me, sleepwalker, do not hide, I will find thee." And that's kind of it. It's not, I want to say it's done in a malicious way, but it could be a good thing, I don't know. But as they are going along, the slave traders are going through like a desert that's near the outpost or whatever, taking them to where they're supposed to be selling them, and we end up meeting some other new kind of creature characters, but they are called the Worm Men. They are some kind of like cannibalistic like tribe that lives out in this wastelands or whatever, and they now more look like worms than men supposedly, but they do kind of look weird, and they don't talk English. They over here. But eventually the Worm Men kill all these slave traders, and they just basically leave Briar and Spider in their cages. Briar actually kind of gets mad, like stating like, "What, you don't want to eat us? Like, why? What's wrong with us?" As this is going on, Spider eventually does free both of them using like a impromptu lockpick or something like that. Eventually, like as this is going on, since they are in the desert, and they did reference that the Nordish girl was an ice blood. Since they're going through the desert, she's slowly dying because it's too hot. Eventually, like as soon as they get freed, she ends up collapsing because it's just too hot for her. They're made to live in the snow, and so Briar is eventually having to carry Spider through trying to make it anywhere out of the desert basically and get water. And they eventually do find a hut with a man outside, and Briar just basically collapsed. And the second time she's run into sleep in this book, but this time no message or nothing comes. She does wake up, and we are greeted by this man. He basically like brought him inside and kind of warmed him up and stuff like that, or maybe the opposite, cooled him down on him. But Briar starts talking to him, and basically like he kind of recognizes her, and he states that she's a princess, and then he kind of starts filling her in that she got married, and then after that like their whole kingdom went into rambles, and then after that everything kind of ended. And he was saying that now that she is there, that means that it's the end of the world kind of thing. It does take a violent turn as soon as he comes to this realization that it's the end of everything. But it doesn't go down quite like you think, because it's the end of the world for him. He eventually takes his own life in front of the two. Both of them very confused. They don't understand what the hell's going on. Well, maybe Spider does. She doesn't express that at this point. But Briar definitely does not know what's going on. She just found out that she was married, that she was married to a prince that had another kingdom. She does reference that she does remember that kingdom, and that's kind of where the journey is heading. Since her kingdom is gone, she's hoping that the other guy's kingdom is still there, and since she was married to him, maybe she's some kind of queen or something, I don't know. But basically, that's where the book leaves off. Briar Rose goes back into her, like, hey, the narrator is dead. You'll be basically, hearing the story from me, but, what's better than a personal account than anything else, right? The very last page, they do give a very detailed map of, like, the land that this is supposed to be set on. I kind of looked everywhere, like over the map, and I couldn't figure out where the story starts or where we're at now. If anybody knows, just let me know on one of these, hey, it was over here or over here. I don't know. But I like maps. I think it's kind of cool, especially when they're trying to expand the lore of everything. But that's it for the first issue. I mean, as far as the first issue, I liked it. The art was great. The story setup was pretty good. I like that it's based on a story that most people know with a different twist, and a pretty good twist. Um, but hey, that's my review. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you passed it, if you never heard about this. Let me know anything you want to know. I got more reviews coming. Be on the lookout for those, and I will let y'all go. Bye.